Dear all, welcome back after Eid vacation. Hopefully, all of you had a great Eid along with your family members. So, welcome back. Now, let's start with the boring part of your life again. All right. I know very well during this vacation period you forgot a lot of things and you have forgotten whatever you have read before the Eid vacation started, right? So before moving on with the new concepts in today's video, I'm going to give you a brief idea about what were the things that we discussed before Eid vacation started. All right? So just to give you a brief idea. Until the last video, we discussed different types of research. So we discussed types of research based on nature of research question, where we found out that based on research question, research can be of four different types: exploratory research, descriptive research, explanatory research, and evaluative research. Then we learned about types of research based on data collection. There we found out that research can be of three different types: qualitative research, quantitative research, and mixed method research. Moving on, we found out that research can also be of different types based on time horizon. And there we saw that research can be of two different types: cross-sectional research and longitudinal research. Now, in today's class, we are going to see types of research based on theory generation. So how do we generate theory? When do we generate theory? Based on that, how many different types of research are there? And that is what we are going to study today. Now, based on theory generation, research can be of three different types: deductive approach, inductive approach, and abductive approach. So these are also called deductive research, inductive research, and abductive research. Now, listening to the name, I'm sure many of you are thinking that these are going to be very difficult. They sound really difficult, right? So don't worry about it. I'm going to explain each of these concepts one by one, and I'm going to also explain them with practical examples, all right? So please listen to the video very carefully. I guess by the end of the video, all of the concepts will be crystal clear to you. All right, let's start with the first one, which is deductive approach or deductive research. All right. Let's confuse you first with the bookish, boring definition. So here it goes. If your research starts with theory, often developed from your reading of the academic literature, and you design a research strategy to test that theory, you are using a deductive approach. Again, it's very difficult, it's very confusing. I know that. Do not worry, I'm explaining it very soon. Just look at these blue marked portions. The first point, the research starts with a theory. And the second point is, in this research, we want to test that theory. So again, our research starts with the theory, and by doing our research, we want to test that theory. All right? So let me explain point by point here. So in this research, the first thing we need to do is start our research with an existing theory. Don't worry, again, it might be still a little bit confusing to you. I'm going to move on to the example very soon. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what can be a theory and how to use it. All right. Again, the first point is we have to start with an existing theory. Next, we collect data to test the theory. How do we collect data? Maybe we conduct an online survey or maybe a pen and paper survey, right? So through that survey, we ask questions to people, and based on that, we collect data from 100, 200, 300 or even 1,000 respondents. So that's how we collect data. And what do we mean by test theory? We try to find out that the theory that we started with, is it true or is it false? Now, in the second stage, once we have collected the data, in the last stage, what do we need to do? Based on the result of the collected data, we either revise that theory or we do not revise that theory. So whether we'll have to revise that theory that we started with, it will depend on the collected data. Again, I know it's very confusing. Let me finish the whole process first and then I'll explain with an example. Don't worry at all. I will come back to this slide. So again, this is the three-step process. In deductive approach, we start with an existing theory, then we collect data through survey or any other method to test that theory to find out whether that theory is true or whether it is false. And finally, once the data collection is done, we have to revise that theory if needed. So if the data suggests that the theory is true, then we do not have to revise it. On the other hand, if the data says and shows that the theory is incorrect, in that case we need to revise it or you need to change that theory. So that is the whole process. So again, if I want to show this whole process in a chart, it will look like this. We start with the theory, then we collect data to test that theory, and finally, based on the collected data, we have to revise that theory or not revise that theory. Now let's move on to the example. Now please keep in mind this three-step process. In this example, we are going to follow all these three steps and find out what a deductive approach or a deductive research might look like. So let's choose a theory first. I guess everyone here remembers the Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, right? All of you heard of this theory in the MGT 201 class, which is organizational behavior, right? Or even MGT 211 class. So in this model, we have 5 steps. So at the very bottom, we have physiological needs. So all of us needs food, shelter, and things of these sort. So these are the most basic need for everyone. Once all of these needs are fulfilled, then the next layer has safety needs. So we want safety in our life. Now, once these two steps are fulfilled, then we have the need for love or belonging from people, right? Then in the next stage, we have need for esteem. And finally, we have need for self-actualization. So that is the summary of Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. So I guess all of you remembered this theory, but if you have forgotten, don't worry too much. I would request you to go to the web and have a look at this theory. It's very simple to understand. Now say we are going to do a research on this theory. So if we are following a deductive approach, the first thing we need to do is start with this theory. What is the theory? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we need to start with this theory first. So we already have this theory with us, all right? Now, if you remember, the next thing we need to do is data collection. Why? To test this theory. So how are we going to collect data? For example, we are going to collect survey data from 2000 Bangladeshi people, all right? So we are going to do a survey where we are going to ask 2000 Bangladeshi people about their basic needs. Why? To test this theory. Whether this theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is also true for Bangladeshi people. Now, after doing the survey, I collect the result of that survey. All right. Now, let's assume that after collecting data, I analyzed the result and also found out that for most of the people in our country, food, shelter, and things like that are the most basic need. So here we can easily see that for Bangladeshi people as well, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory applies. This theory is true for Bangladeshi people as well, because Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory said that food and shelter are the most basic needs. They are at the very bottom. And after collecting data from Bangladeshi people, I also found out that yes, most of them are saying food and shelter are indeed the most basic need for all of them. So based on this result, what do I do now? This. So according to the result, the theory is supported. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory is supported by the data I have collected. All right. So finally, we do not need to revise the theory because the theory is supported. So that is it. That is the whole process. What did I do here? At the very first, I started with a theory. What was that? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In the second stage, I collected data from 2000 Bangladeshi people. Why? To test this theory. Now, after I have the result, in the third stage, I try to find out whether the result that I have collected or the data that I have collected, whether it supports the theory or rejects the theory. Now, in this case, I found out that my result supports the theory. So because of that, I did not have to do any sort of revision in the theory. So this theory also holds true for Bangladeshi people. And that is a deductive approach. Why? Because I started with the theory, I tested the theory, and based on that result, I either revised the theory or did not revise the theory. I guess it's clear now how to do a deductive research. Let me give you another example of deductive research as well. Now again, let's say we are starting with Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. So here, the first step was, as before, start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now in the second stage, again I collect data, but this time I collect data from 2000 Bangladeshi people from another district. Alright? Now, the fun part is, let's assume based on this result of the survey of 2000 people in a different district, I find out that this is the revised model. So according to the survey response, I find out that most of the people are saying Wi-Fi is the most basic need for all of the people in the survey. Let's assume that 2000 people are saying that Wi-Fi is the thing that they need first in their life or the most in their life. So food, water, shelter, it comes later. All right. So it's a joke, don't worry. Because maybe the 2000 people that we surveyed are heavy users of Netflix or TV series or something like that. So that's why they said that Wi-Fi is the most basic need for them. Now let's go back. So here we started with the theory, we collected data, and the result says that majority wants Wi-Fi as the most basic need for them. Now based on this result, what I'm going to do next? This. So according to this result, the theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs to be revised. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs requires a revision. So finally, we revise the theory. So this is also another example of deductive approach. So again, we started with the theory here. We collected data, and based on that data, we revised the theory finally. And now we can say for Bangladeshi people, Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory requires a revision, and in the revised theory, we will say that the most basic need for Bangladeshi people is Wi-Fi. So that will be the revised theory for Bangladeshi people. Alright, I guess by now it is clear what do I mean by deductive approach. Now let's move on to inductive research. Now, if you have understood the idea of deductive approach, this inductive approach is going to be very easy for you, trust me, because it is the exact opposite of the deductive approach. So let's take a look at the boring definition first again and start by confusing you. So if your research starts by collecting data to explore a phenomenon and you generate or build a theory, then you are using inductive approach. So again, you are confused, I know, but don't worry too much. It's going to be clear very soon, within just the next 2 minutes. So again, let's take a look at the blue mark portion. So we are going to start by collecting data, and based on that data, we are going to generate or build a new theory. That is inductive approach. And I guess by now, many of you have noticed that it is the exact opposite of deductive approach. Why and how? Let's take a look. In the deductive approach, we started with a theory and then collected data. However, here we collect data first. So the inductive approach starts with data collection first, and in the second stage, based on that data that we have collected, we develop a new theory. So here is a graphical representation. We start with data collection and then we develop a new theory based on that data collection. Let's move on to the example, and I guess it will be much clearer to you that way. Let's do a research on TARC. Alright, so it's a RS-45 photo. I guess I don't know who of you belong to RS-45 here, but yes, this is the one I could find out. Now let's assume that we are going to do an inductive approach research on TARC. Now let's assume there is no research on TARC done till now, and there is no theory regarding residential campus or TARC. Alright? So I start with data collection. So I collect data from TARC students about their bonding with their friends. How? By doing interviews. Let's say I collect data from 50 students doing TARC semester, and I ask them in the interview questions about TARC campus. What is their daily experience? How do they spend time? What do they do with their friends? And everything like that. Now, what am I doing here? I am collecting data through interview with TARC students. Now, after doing interview, I find out this result. Many students in the interview said that their bonding improved in the TARC campus or during the TARC campus because of the semester long independent stay with their friends. So basically, you stayed for a very long period of time with your roommate or with your friends, with your buddy. And during that time period, you shared a lot of stuff with that person, right? You shared good moments, you shared bad moments, and everything. And also at the same time, you carried out a life on your own. You were independent. You did a lot of stuff on your own. You took the responsibility of your own life during that 3 month period, right? So you were sort of independent. Now, because of this 3 month long sharing with your friends, you naturally developed a strong bonding with your friend, right? Now let's assume these are the things that I found out while I took interview of 50 TARC students. These are the very things that they said on their own to me. Now, based on this result, I can say this. Semester-long residential campus experience with friends strengthens the bond among students. So what am I doing here? I came up with a theory. I'm proposing a theory where I'm saying this. Semester-long residential campus experience for university students can strengthen the bond among themselves. This is the theory I'm proposing, right? So if I want to summarize the whole process, first, I collected data. Second, I analyzed the result of that data collection. And third, based on that result, I proposed a new theory. That is an inductive approach or an inductive research. And this is completely the opposite of deductive research. So by now, I guess it's clear what do I mean by deductive approach or deductive research and inductive approach or inductive research. Now let's move on to the very last topic, which is abductive research or abductive approach. Now this one is a little bit critical, all right? So please pay attention. It is sort of a mixture of both inductive and deductive approach. So let's again confuse you first. Here goes the formal definition. When you are collecting data to explore a phenomenon, to generate a new or modify an existing theory, which you subsequently test through additional data collection, you are using an abductive approach. I know all of you heard was blah, 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 blah. It's confusing to understand, all right? Don't worry. I understand your point. Let's take a look at the blue mark portion. First, we collect data. Then based on that data, we generate a theory. And finally, once we have a new theory, we collect further data, even more data. Why? To test the theory we have just proposed. So we want to check even further that whether the theory we have just proposed, whether it's true or not, whether it is correct or incorrect. So as I said just earlier, it is a combination of both inductive and deductive approach. I'm going to show you the whole process one by one. Do not worry. So let's take a look at the step-by-step process. So in abductive approach, we start with data collection. All right. So we start by collecting data. Next, based on that data, we develop an initial theory. Again, an initial one. Why initial? Because this theory might change very soon. That is why we are saying an initial theory. Now, if you have noticed, these two steps sound somewhat like inductive research, right? If you have guessed so, you are 100% correct. But the abductive approach does not end here. There are two further steps. So again, I have started with data collection, and based on that data, I have developed an initial theory. Now in the next stage, I collect further data to test the theory I have just proposed. Alright, so I want to find out whether the theory that I have just proposed, whether it's true or false, whether it's correct or incorrect. So I collect even more data for that. And finally, based on the collected data, I either revise the theory or I do not revise the theory. So these four steps together are called abductive approach. So again, just to summarize in a graphical manner. So we start with data collection. Based on that data, we develop an initial theory. Now in the next stage, in order to check whether this initial theory is correct, we collect even more data. And finally, after analyzing this further collected data, we either revise the theory or do not revise the theory. That is called an abductive approach. I know some of you may be still confused. Do not worry, it's very normal. Don't worry at all. I'm moving on to the example right now. So here goes the example. First step, data collection. So I'm going to collect data. So what am I doing here? I'm collecting data by interviewing 5 TARC students about their bonding with their friends. So here I'm going to show you how can I do the same TARC research using an abductive approach. So earlier I did the research on TARC following an inductive approach. Now I'm going to show you how to do the same research using an abductive approach. So as I said, the first step is data collection, where I'm going to interview 5 TARC students. Now after interviewing, I find out this result. 4 students said that their bonding improved during the TARC campus. So this is the result. Now based on this result, I propose an initial theory. What is the initial theory? Semester-long residential campus experience strengthens friendship among students. So this is the initial theory that I'm proposing. It does not end here because this is the initial theory. Now I want to test this initial theory even further. How? By collecting further data. So in further data collection, I collect data using an online survey where I collect data from 200 more TARC students about their bonding with their friends. So initially I collected data from 5 students only. Now I'm going to collect more data from 200 students. If I wanted, I could have collected data from 2000 TARC students. The main issue is I have to collect more data. Now let's assume that after collecting further data, I found out this result. Majority of the 200 students said that their bonding improved during the TARC semester. So these 200 students, majority of them are also saying the same thing. So what do I do now? Based on this result, I do not need to revise my theory because my theory is confirmed. No revision is needed here because the further collected data also says the same thing. So what do I do now? I finalize my theory. So I again say that my theory does not require any revision and the initial theory that I proposed is correct and no further revision is needed. So this is how we conduct an abductive approach or an abductive research. Alright, we are done here with all the 3 different approaches. Now just for your ease of understanding, I'm going to briefly summarize all the 3 approaches. First, we followed deductive approach where we found out that we need to start with the theory, then collect data to test that theory, and finally, based on that data, either revise or do not revise that theory. That is deductive approach. On the other hand, in inductive approach, we start with data collection and based on that data, we develop a theory. So this is the complete opposite one. And finally, in abductive approach, we start with data collection, and based on that data, we develop initial theory. And to test that initial theory, we collect even more data or further data. And finally, based on the result of that further data, we either revise that theory or do not revise that theory. That is abductive approach. All right. Congratulations. We are done here. So thank you. See you very soon in the next video.